Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits. Or, to put it another way, Thos Ribbits is me. And today I'm going to be putting that me into meander. Because we're going to have a proper roundabout conversation with my good friend Dom McChesney. Now, usually on Musical Talk we've got a good idea about what each conversation is going to be before we have it. It's often an interview with someone about their creative processes, or it's a review about a show, or we might be discussing some issue related to musical theatre in general. Rare is it that I sit down with someone and just start talking to see where the conversation goes. But occasionally we do that, and occasionally, if you're sort of plugged in symbiotically to the right kind of person with the right kind of thinking and the right kind of knowledge, then you can have a surprisingly fabulous conversation. So that's what you're going to get today. As I said, I sat down with Dom, who's no mean player in the world of musical theatre, either in knowledge or actually in participation. And we started with the subject of Florodora. But didn't we go places? Because over the course of the next hour, you'll hear our wide-ranging, meandering, but I hope always interesting conversation touching on shows such as Follies, Rosemarie, Hellzapoppin, Salad Days, Aladdin, South Pacific, Little Mary Sunshine, Quilp, and Billy the Kid and the Green Bay's Vampire, plus many, many, many more. So, find yourself a comfortable chair, pull up a drink, or, if you prefer, find yourself a comfortable drink and pull up a chair. But whatever you do, do enjoy this episode of Musical Talk. Musical Talk. Dom.
Hello.
Now, we don't get to talk to each other nearly enough.
No.
But I have to say, when we do, it's always a pleasure. And the thing I'd like to say to listeners is it's a great pity they don't hear the conversations we have when the recording isn't taking place. Because you and I ramble all over the 19th, 20th and 21st century in terms of musical theatre.
I think we do, yes. We could go on for hours. I'm sure we will in the future.
Well, I'd like to put that to test.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question straight off.
Yes.
I'm researching a famous show that's almost legendary, that is legendary, but it's my contention that most people know of it rather than know anything about it. So I just want to see. So let me ask you a question.
Okay.
If I said the name Florodora to you, what does that bring to mind?
I would say, Edwardian, maybe Victorian. I can't place the actual period, but I definitely see it as some sort of, it's an operetta, and I've certainly heard of it. I know that I have seen pictures of it on Forgotten Musical's website. I also remember a song called Tell Me Pretty Maiden, which I believe is from it.
It is indeed, yes.
And I think it's spoofed in The Girl Who Came to Supper, which is Noel Coward's version of the Prince and the Showgirl. It's not actually called that in the play. She tells the story of the Coconut Girl.
Yes, that's right.
And I believe that is meant to be a spoof of Florodora. I also know this because I'm speaking to my mother. My grandfather saw it.
No,
the original
really?
Production.
That's amazing.
I know. My grandfather was a Victorian. And I was talking to my mother about musicals recently to see if there was anything interesting for Musical Talk. But the main outcome of it was that the person I should have spoken to was my grandfather, who sadly died before I was born. But apparently he saw everything.
Oh, he was a real...
He was
Edwardian,
he loved Edwardian, Victorian. He was a child in... He was just a Victorian, so he was born in the end of the 19th century.
Ah.
So, but he would have maybe not...
He wouldn't have seen the original run. Let me put you out of your misery on the year. It's 1899 to 1901 on its original London run.
No, he might have seen that. He was born in 1889.
Oh, so he could have seen it as a 10-year-old?
Yes. And he was taken to the theatre, not the cinema at that age.
He was taken to invent the cinema.
He was taken to shows very regularly.
Oh, so he might well have done.
Yes. He may have even seen a GNS. I mean, they would have been revivals at that point, wouldn't they?
1895 was the last new one. That's the Grand Duke.
Right.
So if he did, that would have been astounding.
Wouldn't have been incredible?
Yeah, to have a connection there.
Yes. Who knows? I'll never really know that, unfortunately.
Well, you know more than almost anyone I know about Florodora.
Really?
And because you've been able to talk about it for a good couple of minutes. Most people say, oh, I've heard of it. It's a legendary show from 100 years ago or so. I don't really know anything about it. Some of them can say, not the songs. You're the first person who's said, I know that song. Most people say, well, I think there might have been some girls in it.
Yes.
Because one of the things that's attributed to it is the first sort of chorus girl scene. There were chorus girls beforehand.
Yes.
But this is the first one that sort of made a feature of it, because Tell Me Pretty Maiden, which was a hit,
Yes.
it actually has nothing to do with the plot at all. It's actually halfway through Act 2, when 6 identical beautiful women and 6 more or less identical handsome men come on, sing this song to each other, which is a beautiful song.
Yes.
And is still very occasionally sung to this day.
Yeah.
Before they go off, and then the plot resumes.
Yes.
So but it's actually funny enough. It's one of the roots to the Ziegfeld Girls, and the Ziegfeld kind of which takes us to Stephen Sondheim and Follies.
Yes.
So it's a direct result from Florodora.
And it was the, I suppose, precursor for all the great operettas, like
The Frimmel's, you mean?
The Frimmel's,
Yes.
and
And Novello as well.
And Novello as
Yes.
well. Yes, indeed.
So tell me about this spoof. Now, you said it was in.
It's in the second act of The Girl Who Came to Supper. Do you know it?
It's the last score by Noel Coward, isn't it?
Yes.
After he'd done Sail Away,
That's right.
he then did The Girl Who Came to Supper, and the best song is the cut song, I think, isn't it? Which is the one where the king sings about other assassination attempts on his predecessors.
Unfortunately, it opened at the same time that Kennedy was assassinated.
And so it was cut for taste and decency.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So that would have been 1970.
Long live the king if he can.
Ah,
is
that's
the name
right,
of the
yes.
song.
Now, when was Kennedy assassinated?
63.
63. So I'm terrible with
Sail Away
dates.
is 61, so that would be about right. Yeah.
Yes. I've never seen it. I know the cast recording. It's Florence Henderson and
Jose Ferrer.
Jose Ferrer, yes, and Tessie O'Shea.
Oh, now she sings my favourite mock musical song, which is What Ho, Mrs. Brisket.
Which is from the show.
It is indeed,
Yes,
that's right,
it is, yes.
Because she sings all these, she's there as a kind of Cockney Sparrow.
Yes,
well,
yes,
isn't she?
absolutely.
And she sings all these, but they're good because everyone forgets, of course, Noel Coward was sort of born in Teddington here in West London.
Everybody thinks he's terribly, but
Yes.
really he wasn't.
Yes, he was
so
good.
it was covered all the classes, really.
And he would have seen music hall in its last iteration before it became variety.
Yes.
So yes, he would have certainly have known that kind of thing. But What Ho, Mrs. Brisket I love because I can almost hear, funnily enough, I can almost hear George Formby sing it. Do you know What Ho, Mrs.
yes.
Brisket? Why not take a chance and risk it?
That's right.
You'll
Come
have
and dab in the...
You'll have a lot of fun amongst the shrimps and dabs. Oh, I can't remember it. No, well, the thing I remember is at the end is if a saucy old shark for a lark wants to nibble at your chocolate biscuit, run for the shore and the crowd will roar, what ho, Mrs. Brisket. That's how I remember it. But it feels like, you could have a sing-along.
Yes. But it absolutely creates what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
And in fact, the spoof of Florodora happens just after that, I believe.
Oh, really?
Because that is a moment where the young prince and the main female character, I don't know the name, they go off into London and they get entertained by this Cockney extravaganza. And
they have a night in the calls, don't they?
Indeed, with the pearly king and queen doing their knees up.
For export,
clearly. Yeah, yes. And then just after that, I believe that he's asking her about the show that she's in, which is called The Coconut Girl. And she does, I think it must be nearly about 10 minutes. She does this musical number where she covers all the songs and she explains the entire story. So she starts off with the opening chorus, and she's one of the chorus girls. Cool girls.
Yes, it's quite a different thing. Yes.
Quite a different thing. And
so it's like a backers audition.
Yes, indeed. And there's a number between the girls and the boys.
Oh well, yeah.
And she's explaining that. She then does a brilliant moment she talks about the third act of the show, I love these kind of little clever musical
references.
Gags, but it's meant to be a octet sung by all these different girls, and they've all got different lines, and so she sings the song, which is we're 6 lilies. Oh, that's right, it's 6. So we're 6 lilies of the valley, and then it goes to all the names, which is very typical of the operettas
Yeah.
of the time. Then she sings her part, which is the lowest
Oh,
line and the most, with no tune whatsoever, so it's all on one note, and she misses out everyone else's and she just sings her line. It's very, very
Sounds
funny,
good.
very clever.
Well, you're right, that's very definitely a spoof then of Florodora, because Florodora is set on an island where they use the amazing abundancy of the flowers to make perfume. They're not all named after flowers, but there's a great deal of that going on. So, no, he would have been too young. He would have seen the revival. Noel
Right,
Coward,
but he
wouldn't
would have been aware of it because it would have
yeah.
it would have certainly been in public consciousness at that point.
Well, it was
wouldn't
revived regularly until the 1930s in the West End.
Right.
1931 is the last big revival.
Okay.
Then it carried on tour until the 50s.
Really?
In this country, yeah. The last major revival in America was in the 20s and
Right.
carried on tour afterwards.
Yes.
So, for 20, 30 years, it was ubiquitous, really.
Right. Yes.
But I think it was spoofed, well, I know for a fact it was spoofed in other shows, because there's a song called Tell Me Handsome Stranger.
From Little Mary Sunshine.
That's right, which presumably is a kind of retrospective satire or spoof of those sort of George Edwards turn of the century musicals, which were so popular in Britain and go over to America.
Well, it's very much a spoof of Rosemary.
It's a semi-operetta.
So yes,
isn't
it is, and it absolutely references Rosemary with all the stout-hearted men and all the rest of it. So yes,
Give me some men who are stout-hearted men, and I'll soon give you 10,000 more.
Yes,
I've heard
exactly.
Barbara Streisand sing that, and it has a very different tone when she
it
sings
does, doesn't it? It goes on in a completely different direction. So they do the whole wonderful end of Act 1 choral going on for ages.
Actually, Gilbertian and Sullivan.
Yes, exactly, very much so. So, regardless of whether people have heard of Florodora or not,
its tropes have survived.
they're absolutely the tropes have survived because they're used. If they've never heard of Florodora but they've seen a Gilbert and Sullivan at any point in their life, they are going to be aware of it. I mean, and everything from the bridesmaids in Ruddy Gore and the villagers coming in and all the rest of it. It's very much out there in the sense of...
It's funny, actually, you should say that, because it's probably a transitional piece, I think. And I'll be elaborating a bit more on this in a future episode of this programme, because I want to look at it in depth. But it's 1899. You're right, Sullivan is still alive. Sullivan's last operetta comes out at the same time as Florodora does. But at the same time, you've got George Edwards and the Gaiety productions, which are all pretty much called The Girl From and The Girl Who.
Yes.
The girl in the taxi and the girl who borrowed a kettle and the girl who went to the fishmonger's. Some of them got fairly unprepossessing titles, but they're all sort of hit after hit after hit. And it was identified at the time as a musical comedy and not an operetta, and the press made a great deal of that. They were saying, this is one of these newfangled musical comedies, which have started... They had occurred in London, where there was something called Dorothy, which got the Doyley Carts upset because it was doing better business than the latter GNSs.
Right. But people were twigging into wanting something a little different.
Well, I think what the difference seems to be, and it's quite a moot point, because when I've listened to the score of Florodora, I adore the score of Florodora, and I literally do. I'm going to stop now, but I do like it. But it feels very Sullivan-esque. Feels very Gilbert and Sullivan-esque. The thing that's different about it, and this is something the press said at the time, is that Gilbert's plots were meticulous. He would build up his world, and then you've got this sort of denouement, which is often called topsy-turvy, but it's actually the logical denouement or the nonsensical world that he's built.
Yes.
This isn't that at all. It's a much looser plot. And it's just, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. And that seems to be the hallmark of where Edwardian musicals go.
Right.
Because once I finish with Florodora, eventually I'm going to start going into George Edwards. Because I think he's one of the unsung heroes of at least the British musical stage.
Yes.
And if he hadn't died in 1915, 16, something like that, and carried on producing shows into the 20s, I think there would have been a thriving British parallel to the American musicals.
Oh, really?
Yes. Now, I've learned something very interesting. These are the kind of facts that, unfortunately, they're throwaways, so it's great for a conversation like this.
Yes.
But I probably won't put it in a proper studious review of Florodora and its legacy. But George Edwards, I discovered. The reason I discovered this is because the principal female character in Florodora in the original run was Ada Reeve. who lived right up until the 50s and went on
Right.
to do an awful lot of very high-profile stuff. And on her 80th birthday, she brought out her memoirs called Take It For A Fact, which is one of the lines of her big song from Florodora, which is called Tact.
Oh.
Which is basically by being feminine and flirtatious and tactful and flattering men, you can get away with anything. It's a very funny enough, it's very Gilbertian song.
Yes.
But it's written by a man called Paul Rubens, who was not the main composer of Florodora, he was the secondary composer.
Yes.
But he wrote very funny lyrics. He died young as well. But, sorry, I have just bought her memoir and I've been flicking through it quickly. I'm going to read it thoroughly. But she was a friend of George Edwards.
Right.
Although she quarrelled with George Edwards in 1899 for San Toy, which you may or may not have heard of.
San Toy,
which
no.
was another musical of the period which hasn't got the reputation of Florodora, but was
Right.
big. And so that's how she ended up in Florodora, because she worked for the dailies instead of for Edwards.
Ah, right.
But
I
anyway,
understand.
they became friends again, and she ended up appearing in all these shows, including San Toy later on. But George Edwards apparently was in Germany in 1914. He was British, but in Germany in 1914, when the war broke out,
Yes.
he was there on a research trip trying to find the new Merry Widow, because he'd had such a success with the European operetta that was just coming in.
Right.
But he was looking for the next one.
Yes.
Germany and Austria were sort of recognised sources of the European school of operetta
Yes.
rather than the British school of operetta. And he was interned. The Germans interned him in 14 rather. And although they released him before the war was over,
Yes.
he came back, produced one more show, but the situation so had weakened him
Yes.
that he died. So he
Oh, good
died in the
Lord.
middle of the First World War. And you think... So the Gaiety comedies still continue for a bit afterwards, though
Yeah.
Our Miss Gibbs is a bit afterwards.
Okay, yes, I was wondering where that, because the Lionel Monkton...
That's right. They go
so-
on to the early 20s,
Right.
but they're petering out because the driver has gone.
Right, yes.
And you think, well, if only we'd had that kind of musical running in the 20s, because when you start looking at things like the Play Pictorial, which is a really interesting magazine in that period,
Yes.
you can see throughout the 20s it's Lady Be Good and Irving Berlin things, and they're all
So they're
coming
bringing
over.
them over.
They
in
are, they're
droves,
bringing
so-
them over. But you think if we had our own industry, certainly in the Edwardian period, we were actually taking them over there. I mean, the Americans like, quite rightly, to look at George M. Cohan as being the answer to Gilbert and Sullivan and making the American tone.
Yes.
But actually, the big successes for the first 10 years in America were exactly the same as the big successes in Britain. They're the
Yes.
Edwards musicals. I know one other thing about the Edwards musicals at this stage is they're mostly still all in copyright. Because he had a kind
Really?
of sort of contract writer, or at least a contributor as a writer, who didn't die until 1968. He was a very young man in the Edwardian period, and he'd lived a full and ripe life. Died just before, well, only a few years before I was born. And therefore, with the copyright laws being 70 or 90 years, depending on what country you're in,
Yes.
technically speaking, if we wanted to do the Quake Girl or that kind of show, we'd have to pay. Whereas Florodora, bless them,
Yeah.
everyone involved in it was dead by 1928.
Oh, good Lord. That's very strange. It's funny that you should mention the Quaker Girl because... Oh, no, it wasn't the Quaker Girl. I had a theatrical agent in
Oh, yes.
England who wanted to do a revival of The Maid of the Mountains.
Good Lord. Now,
He always thought you could redo that.
followed by
so-
Swiss Miss, presumably.
Probably yes. Now, did you know, and I don't know whether it is, and I found it online and I bookmarked the page and I will send you the link because I was not aware of it until I saw it. And I don't know who produced it and I've forgotten who wrote it, but I saw it and I thought I must send that to Thos, of the earlier musical of the Pickwick Papers.
No.
It was written in the 1800s.
You mean more or less contemporary?
Yes,
No.
a like an operetta stroke
Yeah.
musical.
So
it
we're
would
not
have been
talking
like-
Pickwick here. We're just
no,
to clarify, we're
not
not talking Leslie
Pickwick.
Brickers.
No, we're talking before 1900. It was a musicalisation of the Pickwick Papers,
Good
and I
Lord.
think that might be one of the first
It must be.
adaptations. Certainly, it would have been the first
We're
Dickens
always,
adaptation.
We're always talking about Dickens adaptations, aren't we?
Yes,
So,
indeed.
You must send me that link.
I will, I
Is there
will
any
find it.
recordings? Not audio. There wouldn't be any contemporary.
I'm not sure.
but
It's
do you know
on.
if-
It's on. I will need to double check. So I
I'd love
can't
to
remember.
know if
But I
the
saw
song's
it,
alive.
and then I saw it, and I thought, gosh,
Yeah.
I'd never heard of that, and I thought I must send that to Thos because I'm sure he'd be fascinated by that. So.
One day I want to compile a complete list of all the Dickens adaptations that I can find in terms of musical
Yes,
theatre.
I
Because
did
it-
the Shakespeare a
Oh,
few years ago.
did you?
And I think there was only, and I went into really,
Yeah.
I really went into some very odd extremes in order to find something that was linked in a few cases I was linking it to the character or going, well, that was kind of so, but there is a vast amount of majority of his plays.
Yes.
You can find a link to some a musical or other. Some are direct adaptations of Shakespeare plays. There's a lot of spoofs, certainly of a lot of the tragedies. There are serio-comical versions of some of the tragedies. There are some direct adaptations of the tragedies. The histories are difficult, but you can link about 3 or 4 of them. There was only one definite adaptation that was meant to happen and never did, which was a musical of Henry V. And it was called Cabbages and Kings, and it was being directed by Ian McKellen.
So what happened to that?
I don't know. I think because a friend of mine auditioned for it when he was a young man,
Lord.
and I asked him about it, and I wonder if Ian McKellen would talk about Sir Ian. He might talk. He's meant to be a terribly
Friendly
approachable
chap.
chap. So, but
But it seemed to have let slip the dogs of war.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and then I connected like Henry VIII. I linked to the musical Rex, which is Rogers. So I did some links like that.
1970, it was quite
I
late,
think so.
isn't it? Yeah.
Glenn Close.
Yeah.
But
I don't know the name of the street it was written in.
So
Sorry.
that's fine.
So under what circumstance were you
It was a
researching?
Facebook exercise.
Oh, how fantastic.
And I just thought, I'm just going to do it because I don't particularly like Shakespeare.
No.
I'm not.
That's
It
not the point, is
doesn't.
it?
It doesn't sit. And I asked. As an exercise, I had asked friends to name weird subjects, and I could to test my own musical knowledge to see whether I could link things that they mention into a song or musical. And not many people gave me any. So I thought, okay, I'll set myself an own challenge. So I did that, and then I looked at the Dickens one, but I've never actually got much further, really. But there are quite a few. There's quite a few strange ones that have never seen the light of day. So as long as both Dickens and Shakespeare, as long as you.
Smike is the one that always comes from nowhere.
Yes, absolutely.
And then Leslie Newley's Lost Old Curiosity Shop.
Oh yes,
Where is this?
Mr. Quilp. It was called Quilp.
That's right, and it's available on YouTube. But apparently the master video has gone.
Oh really?
So it was made by Hallmark.
Yes, I saw it because it's got that song. It has a song at the end, "The Sport of Kings," where he's at the racecourse, and I just remember him leaping around like the child catcher. So,
well, apparently the master tape has gone missing.
Oh, no.
So there are these versions online, but they are all off the box from the 70s or whenever, when it presumably was recorded. So certainly someone could do something with it, because actually, the little I saw of it, it looked rather good, or it certainly looked entertaining. You know, it was slightly in the same mould as, say, not that this is Dickens, but Dr. Dolittle. It had that kind of slightly larger-than-life, slightly cartoony
My
attitude.
friend Little Nell.
She can go to hell. Oh, she has.
Oh.
See, we're laughing at the death of Little
I
Nell.
know, that's marvellous. It's always a good point.
That trope is proven true every time, isn't it?
So, but yes, I was aware of that, and so I didn't know it was on YouTube, and I will hunt that out. So occasionally things do crop up, and you go, oh gosh, that's a little gem.
Well, one of the films I hope to watch and review for Musical Talk at some stage is the one I mentioned in the Christmas quiz this year, which is the film Tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
With the T-O-O.
Yes.
And it's got this bizarre history. Once again, I love these little nuggets, which they're not long enough to make a programme out of, but a conversation like this is perfect for this kind of thing. And I've mentioned it before, but it was produced by Harry Saltzman, who was the other producer who wasn't Broccoli on the early Bond films. I think he was taking a leaf out of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and thought there's some money to be made from this. Obviously, it's 1970, and it's Olivia Newton-John's first film. And it's about this student pop group who make money by being a pop group, and they've invented this new musical instrument called the tonalizer.
Yes.
However, when they're playing one of their gigs and using the tonalizer, it attracts some passing aliens, as you do.
Right, yes.
Who beam them up to their spaceship and then back to their planet, where they are forced to entertain the entire planet. I don't know anymore, that's the outline of the plot.
Yes.
Obviously, it could have happened to any of us, of course.
Yes.
But the thing that's strange and weird about it is that it's directed by Val Guest.
Oh, yes.
Who I know as directing a lot of the Ealing comedies in the 1940s with Will Hay.
Yes.
Non-musical, but, so he's a voice from the past by 1970, bless him.
Yeah.
Very talented, very funny man. But he wasn't paid. They had trouble getting the finances.
Oh,
so he
good
did his work
Lord.
and was never paid. So he took an injunction out against Saltzman and his company because he wasn't paid. And so it was only ever shown for 1 week in one cinema in this country, which is actually the London Pavilion,
Right.
which is where the Ripley's, believe it or not, is, for Trocadero
Yes.
in Piccadilly Circus. That's how we know it now. It's mostly known as Trocadero. Formerly the London Pavilion, one of the biggest music halls in London.
Yes.
Formerly a theatre. But it only showed for a week in the 1970s, and then there's this injunction put on, and then it's disappeared from view until it somehow crept out after Val Guest's death.
Yes.
In fact, the copy that's made it onto DVD is from the Val Guest collection.
Oh, goodness.
So it's from his personal archive somehow. So it's odd how these things seep out. Now, you might argue, well, if you wanted to be paid, surely closing down the opportunity of making money out of it might be the wrong way to go about it. But,
And have you watched it yet?
No, it's staring at me in its cellophane wrapper, saying, "You must watch me at some stage." But I feel I need two things: I need someone else to be there with me to discuss it,
And a
secondly,
very large bottle of whiskey.
I was and possibly an old service revolver if it's really bad. Yes, but so little. That's a film that I'd never even heard of until I was researching the quiz this Christmas.
Because when you mentioned it on the quiz,
Yes.
I was going, well, I've never heard of that. I mean, and I've heard of things like the Apple. I don't know
What's the Apple? Tell me, I've not heard
the
of
Apple.
that.
I've never seen it.
I'm guessing it wasn't big.
It was no. It was it's set in New York. It's a dystopian rock musical, and
They're
all
very
I
rarely
know,
utopian rock
it's
musicals,
very
aren't they?
very disco-y, very disco. It's probably 80s actually. I know that
Now is the winter of our
Ackland-
disco tent. Sorry.
Yes, indeed.
Sorry. Joss Ackland.
Joss Ackland is in it, and it's all like Eve and God and things like
hence
that.
Apple.
It's very strange. There's a few clips on YouTube, so I shouldn't
year
say
would
too
you
much
say?
about it because I can't. I think it's probably about 1980.
When people were still making odd films
yes,
like this.
very, very strange. But I remember some. I've just kind of gone off on a weird my brain. But while you were talking, I've been remembering strange and odd musicals that appeared and then disappeared and then have now reappeared on DVD. And I don't know if and the things that would have been shown on. And I think this was shown and made for Channel 4. And it's a musical called Billy the Kid and the Green Bay's Vampire.
It's not ringing any bells.
Really?
No, not at all.
It's Alan Armstrong.
So made for television, you're saying?
I believe it was made for television. And it's about... Billy the Kid is played by Phil Daniels.
Oh, yeah.
And he's
So
a
not that
snooker
many years
player.
ago.
No, and he's a snooker player. And he goes up against the Green Bay's Vampire, played by Alan Armstrong, who is obviously... This has been created... So he looks a bit like Ray Reardon, because he's got the widow's peak, and his thing is that he wears vampire teeth, and it's a snooker match between the old school and the new school.
Oh, right.
And
that dates it to the mid-80s, then, doesn't
yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I tell you who's also in it is Caroline Quentin is in the chorus.
Oh, so before she became a name, then?
Yes. It also features Bruce Payne as the snooker promoter who takes under his wing, and it's pretty ghastly, but there's a couple of very funny songs in it.
So who wrote the score, do we know?
No, I can't remember off the top
It's
of my
such
head.
an odd thing to make a musical about,
Yes,
isn't it?
a snooker,
Yeah.
a snooker musical. But maybe I will get a copy of that. It might be
Yes.
interesting to watch that. So
I look forward to your commentary.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'll bring that back maybe, and then
Yes.
I do have it down in Devon if it's no longer available. But that's a very
That
strange
feels
one.
like an evening of
Yes.
full entertainment, if that makes sense.
does.
But occasionally musicals do end up on television. And they're odd ones. Channel 4, once again, I remember this is very simple. It was for New Year's Eve 1999-2000.
Yes.
It was called Millennium the Musical.
Oh, right.
And it was a 45-minute, as far as I remember, animated musical with new words set to fairly famous tunes, many of which were musical numbers,
Yes.
purporting to tell the story of the last 1,000 years, animated by Bob Godfrey. It was Bob Godfrey of Rhubarb and Henry's Cat
Good
fame.
Lord.
His last professional work, because he retired almost immediately afterwards. But what's lovely about it is, he's also the narrator of the piece, so he sort of plays an everyman town crier.
Oh,
so
yes.
yeah. So he rings his bell and then tells you where we moved on to, but he's got that kind of laconic, slow, but automatically sarcastic voice. And it's exactly what you want for a cartoon history.
Yes, exactly.
Of the world in 1,000 years.
And did you enjoy it?
It was fantastic.
Really? And it must be, I assume it must be on YouTube, I should imagine these days.
I would hope so, yeah.
So
I think I've got a recording somewhere from the original broadcast. I liked it. I mean, it's not, it's not a professionally written score or anything. It's a hodgepodge of this, that and the other.
Yes.
But it's just done in that beautiful Bob Godfrey way.
Yes. With
yeah. Kind of, there was Wobbleman.
Listeners, you can't see the movement I'm doing here. But
I wish I could shimmy like you or my sister Kate. That's right.
Yes. But this is interesting because I think we're actually coming into an area which would make a very good podcast, actually, which is these rare English television musicals. And things, because of course they did salad days for television over here.
When did they do that?
In the 80s, and Ian Richardson played I think it was a production that had been a hit.
Yes, it was a 77 revival.
Yes, I think it might have been that. It was a revival.
Steeple in the television version? Or she was in the 77 version?
So that's what it was. It was a recording of that, but it was definitely filmed for television. So it wasn't a film of the theatre show. And they had like a wonderful gazebo, which became the house, and it became the nightclub, and it became all the things. So the setting was always the park, apart from the opening number. And I remember that, and I had it on tape, on videotape, and I played it to death, usually looking for a piano. Not looking for a piano while I played it, but and of course they did the only time really that was one of the only times. Of course, America has a great history of doing these television
for years.
Which is strange. Yes.
Into the Woods. The version I had was the Bernadette Peters one, the
yes.
original 87.
Oh yes, indeed. But they did actually make these for television as well, didn't they? Because they had the Cinderella and the Cole Porter Aladdin, and
yes, absolutely. Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella is one of my favourite Rodgers and Hammerstein, which doesn't say much, but
it's the only one that's got some humour in it.
It's actually pots of humour. And did you know they did it on stage in London in the Palladium?
Yes, with Tommy Steele and
Kenneth Williams as one of the ugly and Jimmy Edwards, I think, as the king.
And the fairy godmother was played by Betty Marsden.
What, from Round the Hall?
Yes.
Many times.
Many times. It's a lovely man.
I didn't know. Well, I knew. I didn't know she was in it.
And I think Cinderella was played by Jana.
No, who's Jana?
I believe she was the singer who won the Eurovision Song Contest with a song which she played on her guitar called A Little Loving, and it was a little loving, a little giving, but she sang it in I don't know where she was from. I'm guessing her European language. When she did the final reprise.
I say reprise.
Reprise. When she did the final reprise, she was singing on the guitar, and suddenly she sang in all the different languages.
Oh, did she now?
And it was a magical, one of those magical TV moments
of
my childhood.
Gimmick.
It was a gimmick, yes. Oh, you are cynic. And I think she was playing Cinderella. Now, Jana may be somebody completely different.
But it's funny that Jana won Eurovision and so did Dana.
Yes.
So obviously I've detected. If I ever enter, I'll have to call myself Plana or something like that.
Yes. Although maybe did Nana Muscuri ever win?
I think she did.
So Nana, Jana, and Dana.
Oh, do you know? There might just be something in this.
There's a show there.
Yeah, there is.
And also after the Cinderella, they also did Cole Porter's Aladdin at the Colosseum or the Palladium with Bob Monkhouse playing Aladdin.
Now.
But there's no recording of that one.
Well, you say that, but I've heard Bob Monkhouse sing a song that's clearly from the score of Aladdin, because so there may have been an individual single or something there. Because now I'm dredging my memory for this because I heard it on the radio years ago. I think either within the late David Jacobs radio programme or Desmond Carrington's.
Yes.
Both marvellous men. It was something about. There were several rhymes about buxom women. That's the thing I remember.
Not come to the supermarket. It's not that one.
Oh yes, I think it is.
Because it's dun 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 dun.
That's the one he was singing.
Yeah. Which is not the character of Aladdin. But maybe he didn't play Aladdin. Maybe he actually played, because that would make sense because he'd be too old to play Aladdin. Because it was a Cyril Ritchard in the TV version.
Famously Captain Hook in America.
That's right.
And it's a British cabaret star in this country,
yes,
isn't he?
And he's also in Half a Sixpence.
Is he?
The film of Half a Sixpence. And he starred in a wonderful musical which I adore called The Happiest Girl in the World. Which is the story of Lysistrata.
I've seen a musical of Lysistrata, which is a sex strike, isn't it?
That's right, yes. But this one, The Happiest Girl in the World, I recommend you look at. It's Yip Harburg's lyrics to Offenbach's music.
Now there's a combination.
And it's
a culture shock.
Wonderful.
Does it work?
Yes, it is so witty. But it flopped, unfortunately. But Cyril Ritchard directed it, and he also started it as one of the main characters. So I think it was a little bit. I don't know the full story about it.
Sometimes you need another voice, don't you?
Yes, exactly. Yes. But it's a great score and very, very funny. And I found it a lot funnier than any of the other adaptations of Lysistrata that I've
Yes, there is a tendency to make it a bit po-faced, ironically.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like it ought to be.
Yes, indeed.
Bob Monkhouse is curious because obviously when you say Bob Monkhouse singing, I always think of the Rodgers and Hart music.
The Boys from Syracuse.
The Boys from Syracuse, where he and Ronnie Corbett are supposed to be the interchangeable...
Well, no, they're not actually.
Ronnie, Master and Slave.
Yes, Ronnie Corbett, because it's Bob Monkhouse and Dennis Quilley play the Antipholus, or the Antipholi, if you want to use the plural.
Yes.
So, and the Dromios are Ronnie Corbett and I can't remember who else played.
You are good though.
So I did The Boys from Syracuse a long time ago. So, and it's a wonderful show. I saw it
at the Union 2 years ago.
Oh,
I think.
really?
Yeah, absolutely. They did it on a sort of smallish basis, but it worked very well.
It's a very nice piece. I mean, there's some. I think I like it especially because there's one moment where they say one line from Shakespeare, and the character pops out from the side and goes Shakespeare, and then pops back out again. Because it's vaudeville, and it has to be done so.
But some of the songs are lovely, I think, and that makes He and She is one of my favourites.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, the slightly estranged husband and wife are remembering how weird and wonderful relationships can be.
Yes, indeed. Now, the film of that is missing, I think, at the moment, because there's a very old film of that with Martha Ray.
Oh, I know Martha Ray. I know her from Hellzapoppin.
Ah, a wonderful show film.
And with music as well. So
it is. Watch the Birdie.
Watch the Birdie, that's right, absolutely.
Because that's one of the only times I've ever heard my surname used in a show. Because at one point during the show... they stop it and says, we have a message for Robert T. McChesney.
That's right, yeah.
You have to go home because your wife has had a baby boy, and this man jumps up and then runs off and then suddenly goes, wait a minute, my name's not McChesney. And that's the end of the joke. But, because that's... So, that was a very strange point of reference for myself and my family when we were younger. We'd watch it go, oh, it's us!
Film. But do you know what it's now famous for in a totally different... Because, well, there's two different things to say about Hellzapoppin.
Yes.
First is there was a staged version of it. Well,
yes.
It was originally a staged version, a review kind of variety thing, which was totally changed to make the film.
Yes, because it was considered impossible to do, but because it was so popular, they
made a Hellzapoppin.
Yes.
But then there was a Hellzapoppin musical in the 60s or 70s, I think, which was a massive flop.
Right, yes. Now, that didn't go into New York, did it?
I don't think so. I don't really know enough.
I've got a funny feeling it went to Chicago.
All I really know is that it didn't succeed.
Right.
But the thing about Hellzapoppin, the film is...
Yes.
But it's now considered not just a good film, it's also considered to be a sort of historic artifact in one way, because it's one of the earliest representations of professional Lindy Hop dancing. because there's a lovely bit where
very long scene.
Yeah, where
isn't
the
it?
work people, if you like,
Yes.
do this fantastic sort of precursor rock and roll, Lindy Hop. And I, in a totally different world, a couple of years ago, I spent a weekend with some friends at a
Lindy Hop.
at a historic dancing weekend.
Oh, right, okay.
In a small, very, very rainy, very, very dreary, I must say, holiday camp in Wales, which was hired out for the weekend.
Yes.
And during the day, you would be taught how to dance particular dances,
Yes.
everything from the Charleston onwards. I didn't teach you Lindy Hop, but because it was all about dance, and there were lots and lots of people who were I went because I like 1930s costumes.
Yes.
So I spent a lot of time swanning around in a nice hat and a D-mob suit, actually.
Oh,
so
right,
yeah,
excellent.
no, that's 1940. But you get the idea.
Yes.
But there were lots of very professional and semi-professional dancers there, and there was a showing of Hellzapoppin, and I went to see it because I love Hellzapoppin.
Yeah.
But everyone else there was there for the dance. I was there for the
How
comedy
interesting.
and a bit of Martha Ray, as you
Yes,
quite rightly
yes.
point out.
Oh, how fantastic. Oh, yes. Isn't that right? That's nice that it is still remembered. And I remember a friend who I used to work with sadly died last year, a very young chap. Who he and our point of contact was Hellzapoppin, because we were talking, and he was an actor who was actually in Oliver on stage when it was revived here back in the. I can't remember who was Fagin. I think it was Jim Dale.
Oh, well, make it a 70s revival, wouldn't it?
No, it was the one before the Theatre Royal. It was the one that went into the Palladium. So it would have been Robert Lindsay. Robert Lindsay was his Fagin, and he was playing Oliver. And an actor called Stephen Geller, who then became a DJ for a while. And he also had a few bid parts, but he very sadly passed away last year. But he and I used to talk about Hellzapoppin all the time, actually. So, which was, well, not all the time, but you know.
Well, Martha Ray comes up in odd moments as well, though, doesn't she? Because
yes, I'm trying to think of what other things I've seen her in.
Michael Feinstein does a potted Oklahoma in 2 minutes.
Really?
Have you heard it? It starts with "Oh," as in Oklahoma, and then
Yes.
goes into "What a Beautiful Morning." And then he just managed to segue. He segues all the songs into literally about 2 minutes, and finishes off with the Oklahoma bit. You know, so da 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 Oklahoma da da da. Okay, oy vey, Martha Ray, Gordon McRae, and then he just basically and Martha Ray ends up in that. Now I've not seen the film. I'm guessing she's not in it.
She's not in it.
No, I didn't think it would be an obvious piece for Martha Ray.
A confession, I've never been able to sit through Oklahoma.
You're sitting with the right man now. Yeah, I haven't even been able to get onto the start button of Oklahoma.
I find it. I don't know. I mean, I know it's important.
Oh yes. Yes, it ruined musical theatre.
So, but it is interesting. Maybe that's another one. Maybe we should make ourselves watch it. And see what
that's
happens.
good. Yeah.
And that would be good, because I do like this thing of going outside your comfort zone in a bizarre sort of way.
Doesn't always work though.
No,
because I did see Carousel.
Right.
And that merely confirmed my prejudices.
I've done both Carousel and South Pacific, which got renamed South Pathetic. It was tedious to be in. However, I have since watched the original film of South Pacific, filmed at Theatre Royal Drury Lane, which is on YouTube, and it's the actual
theatre production.
The theatre production, copied for film for their private archive. Ooh. And it's Mary Martin. It appears occasionally and then it disappears. At one of the points when it appeared, I sat down with my mum and we watched it because she'd seen the original production at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane with Mary Martin on her honeymoon to her first husband. And so it was to watch the memory. Now, when I'd been in South Pacific, I've seen the film, I've seen various productions of it, and I've never particularly enjoyed it. I have to say, watching this, even though it was not particularly clear, it was incredible. Because it was a musical play, it was not done as a musical.
Do you know that is a big difference?
And it was really touching. And I had tears in my eyes at the end. And I've never had that with South Pacific. It's also incredible to see Sean Connery in it. And he literally plays an islander. Doesn't say a word. He comes on, poses, looks all beautiful with his body. He's like little loincloth, and goes off again. He does that twice in the whole show. But it was a big surprise to see that. So and Roger's Hammerstein is very strange because maybe those original productions were very different from what they've become now.
Well, but I think you're right, because they're always trying to reinvent things. I mean, even things like Porgy and Bess, when it comes back, it now has to classify whether it's an opera, whether it's a musical, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I think your identification of it as being a play with music, i.e. drama first, is actually a very sensible thing. So many musicals, when they come back, actually over-egg their pudding. I mean, we're going to jump a bit here, but I love How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. I always think, please, when one of these American Broadway shows eventually transfer to London, they never do.
Yeah.
But you can see clips of them, or you buy the soundtrack. So I listened to the recording of the last one, the Daniel Radcliffe's version a few years ago, and they'd taken so many songs. Grand Old Ivy, which should just be a memory of a school song, has been over choreographed and overextended, and actually a slightly cheap sounding orchestra as well as compared to what you would have had.
Yes.
You know, strings don't happen anymore. So and it's suddenly this song, which its purpose is actually a dramatic one as well as a comic one. I mean, it's a comic song, but it's to bond and give him a connection with J.B. Bigley.
Yes.
Completely overwhelmed and overblown, and actually became a tiresome piece.
Right.
And I watched a bit on video, YouTube, and you see all these chaps come on dressed as American footballers and do a dance in the background, and you think, you don't need to recreate that.
Yes.
It isn't about actually
it's just
being
meant to
there.
be these two. It's funny you should say that, because I watched one of my favourite numbers from How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying is Coffee Break.
Oh, yes.
Being a coffee addict myself.
Yeah, and a real life situation for anyone who's worked in an office.
Yes, exactly. And the clip I've seen of Coffee Break from that production, I thought was horrendous.
Oh, really?
I thought it was so overly. It just didn't work, and that seems to be. I think that is something that happens a lot with shows at the moment. Is that they do overemphasize everything, and I remember. It's. I've seen a lot of shows where they say, "Look to the stars," and someone will point in the sky.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I remember doing a show once where I had to sing "Hair Getting Thin" and "Chin Gone Slack," and while we were rehearsing, I automatically went "Hair Getting Thin" and put my hand, and then "Chin Gone Slack," and the director, Janet, the wonderful director, she just went, "Stop."
Yeah.
And she went, "Don't do it. You only need to do one of those." She was like, "If you do both, it looks ridiculous." Yeah. And she said, you don't have to emphasize everything with your hand. I do feel that sometimes happens these days with some shows and directors, is they emphasize all the words, and you don't need to do that because people are a bit more intelligent.
Also, you lose the drama, which is taking exactly that point about the Oklahoma.
Yes.
If it's a play first and if it's a drama first, and I think this is the one thing that's come out of years of talking on Musical Talk.
Yeah.
If the book isn't up to it, your musical's not up to it.
Yes.
And that's it is simply a drama with some songs in it. Every piece of musical theatre,
correct,
whether it's a comedy or what, but it's that idea of overblowing it and making it somehow. This idea that musicals are a different genre in a strange way, and you direct them differently. And you're right, it seems to have come on in the last few years particularly, and I think it's a great sadness to me. It certainly is to me, because actually I think you lose all the subtlety.
Well, the interesting thing in South Pacific, when they sing Nothing But a Dame, they come on there and they stand there. They do not move. And there's two sailors or 3 or 4 sailors lying down, and they're facing the audience, and they just sing the song.
It's a tableau.
They don't move at all. There's
you wouldn't stage it that way now, though.
Never. It would be moving. It would now become the great Morecambe and Wise classic, which, frankly, was maybe actually a lot more enjoyable than some of the productions I've seen.
I think that's. Well, I like Morecambe and Wise, and you know my views on Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Yes.
You share some of them, I think.
I do, yes.
Dom, it's been fascinating talking to you today.
Yes.
I just love the fact that we can worm our way through, we've done a century or more of musical theatre.
I don't know, it's just weird linkings, isn't it?
It is indeed. But we started in 1899 and we finished off at the South Pacific, so we're talking...
Yes. We
50s.
did get to How to Succeed in Business, and the 80s, of course.
Indeed, yes.
Yes.
So let's see, the next time we chat, I'm sure we'll be able to weave our way through the honeycomb in a totally different way. But thank you so much for talking today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Musical talk. There we are. That was Dom McChesney, and didn't we go a long way? And bearing in mind that the plots for some of those Shakespearean musicals we touched on were about 500 years ago, that's a lot of years that we've covered. And that's appropriate, because this is my last episode of 2017. I suppose I should wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and you'll hear more from me in January. But don't forget, there are still episodes of Musical Talk to be heard in the next few weeks. You'll just have Nick Hudson at the helm. So, for the time being, it's probably wise for me to sign off to make room for him. And so, do you know, I will. Goodbye! This episode of Musical Talk presented by Thos Ribbits and Dom McChesney. Edited by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2017. To find out more about the world of musical talk and listen to past episodes, go along to our website www.musicaltalk.co.uk or subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Musical Talk Thos.
There was just no desperation there. It was...
Well, you're blooded in Musical Talk now, because this means you go in the outsource as well. In a minute, I might wind this up and carry on a second episode. Is that agreeable?
Yes,
the conversation is flowing so lovely.
Yes.
That's all right for you.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll finish the coffee break.
You're not a Hoffman.
I don't know much. I know his barrel song, but you can educate me if you like.
So I think whenever I come here, I always think of Hoffman because he did like 2 huge concerts here.
Oh, here was that?
So
here?
at the Royal Festival Hall when it first opened.
He did the Oxford Union as well, didn't he?
Yes, that's right. The wonderful speech of the Oxford Union, but his musical stuff as well. And there's a wonderful selection of interviews with him where he's just improvising and it's just horrendous but it's so funny, and he's one of those people that I really, if I could choose people for a dinner party, he's one of them because he's just such a lovely person.
He's one of those people who I feel I ought to have spent time getting to know but I haven't.
It's very easy to. I mean, because his stuff is available.
It's his BBC tapes as well, aren't they?
That's right, yes. So I would say
give him a whirl.
Watch it, and I would definitely hunt some things out, because some things he was a great thing for commissioning serious people to write comedy. And really? Because he just wanted people to get used to classical music and be open to music, and he wanted to remove the snobbiness of it.
An enthusiast.
Yes, exactly, and he just wanted people to be able to view different types of classical music without this snobbery, really, and he just wanted to make it accessible to everyone.
Depot face something.
Exactly.
Good idea.
So, where were we going?
We were on coffee break.
We were on coffee
before
break.
We were so broken up.
Yes. And Betty Comden as the fairy godmother.
Really?
Yes. So and Yana as Cinderella. Now
so
Yana,
when you say
I
Betty
think.
Comden, you mean the American lyric
No,
writer?
not Betty Comden. Betty Marsden.
Ah, right.